very warm welcome. So, for general, I think you don't need any introduction, but for general audience, just I'm going to tell something about you. Professor Desraju is a structural chemist in SSU, in Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, and he's one of the highly cited author in India or of all time, we can say. And he has so many awards. Like if I'm going to name all the awards, it will take I think 3 to 4 minutes. But if you just search on Google who is the father of crystal engineering, the first name comes is Professor Desi Raju. So now you can imagine what kind of contribution he has done in this field. So today in this podcast or in this talk, like I am going to more focus on how the journey of Professor Desraju had like achieved so much, and the journey as a student, then as a he has worked in industry also. So how was the experience in industry, then now in academia? And Professor Desraju is quite active in other field apart from research or science. Like he has written book Bharat 2.0. So how he vision about India or Bharat. So welcome, Professor Israju, sir. So
Well,
I have
it's
such
very nice to be
yes,
here with you, Abhay, in Science Talks, and
yes, sir.
I think we'll have a nice conversation today.
Yes, sir. I have so many questions. I think I will not be able to ask all of the questions. My friends and like some of my professors also gave me those questions. So, sir, like how your journey started in the field of science? Like how, as a student in the school, then college, then you went to University of Illinois, then you did PhD under two supervisors. How this journey like started and like went through to this end? So, this is my first question.
Well, I think there's no such thing as a planned journey or something. I
Yes.
think from ninth standard onwards, I sort of knew that I really liked chemistry.
Okay. So how?
I don't know. It was just great fun. The first time in ninth class they took us into the chemistry lab, and then the teacher he put one. We didn't know what it was, but now I can tell you it is a mixture of uh, potassium chlorate, sugar, and charcoal. It was in a crucible, and then he took a glass rod and he dipped it in some liquid. We didn't know what it was, but it is concentrated sulfuric acid. So you can, if you know little chemistry, you will know what happens when you
Yes.
touch the glass rod to that mixture.
Yeah.
So there was a huge purple flame that went all the way up to the ceiling. I think that would not be allowed today with all the safety restrictions and all that people do. But then
Yes.
when I saw that purple flame, I thought, my God, and it made a noise also, kind of a thing. And I thought, my, this is so much nice. It's a fun subject with all these purple flames and all that. So then later on, they asked us to make some chlorine and all. And then we all knew from the textbook that chlorine had a bad smell. So
Yes.
some of us actually tried to, these are all things that wouldn't be done today. Tried to take that gas jar and try to sniff that chlorine a little bit. I mean, the consequences were quite bad. But all these things gave me a feeling that chemistry is a subject that's really alive. I don't know. I mean, I was
Okay.
getting good enough marks, I guess, in physics and biology and all that, but somehow it always felt that I wanted to do chemistry. And then finished school, and then in those days, I wrote the IIT exam. And we used to write that IIT exam more as a kind of a fun. It was not like the mad thing that it is today.
Yes.
Nothing. There were no coaching classes also. Well, there was one in Bombay. I grew up in Bombay, so there was one called Agarwal classes. But the main advantage you would say in Agarwal classes is our classroom is air conditioned. So people used to go for to that class just to sit in the AC room, not to study. Things were very relaxed, and people didn't take studies very seriously. Okay, and I think that was part of the fun, which I now find is totally missing among young students. So I wrote that IIT exam. I got a very high rank, very very high rank, and then I then decided for some reason that I don't want to take it up, and they said no, no, something like that. I said no because I really want to study chemistry, and if I go to IIT, then there'll be so many engineering subjects that I don't want to study. So I much prefer to continue in Bombay, and then I did my BSc in chemistry in St. Xavier's College. That was also a really wonderful time because in those days, again, it was really relaxed. We had lectures in the morning, and except for 2 days in the afternoon practicals, the rest of the week, the afternoons were completely free. So this gave students a lot of time to think and sort of move around and read and do anything you want. And it puts a lot of responsibility on students from an early age. And I do believe that responsibility is something that when it is given to you for free like that, you tend to take advantage of it properly. And so then you decide that you want to manage your time well. Saturday was completely free. And usually on Saturdays, what I would do is that near our house was the library of the British Council. And it was a very good library. And I would especially go to the chemistry rack. And then there would be books over there written by chemistry teachers in the UK. And which were quite a bit different from the kinds of textbooks that we had to study from in Bombay University. So I would eagerly borrow those books and then try to make my own notes from that. And then one big day, they told us that there was this very famous book of organic chemistry, which is written by two people called Morrison and Boyd.
Right, yes.
It's a very famous book, but it was the
Yeah.
first time it was coming in India, and it was coming like what they call cheap Indian edition, which in those days was exactly the very large sum of 15 rupees. So 15 rupees in
S-
1968 or
Sir,
69 was quite a
your
large sum
video
of
is
money.
freeze.
It was not a small sum of money. Say that. So I went and bought
Your
that
video
book.
was freeze.
I can't follow you. Your audio is not.
Sir, your video was freeze.
What about
Hello,
my video?
hello.
Hello,
Uh,
is my video all right?
that was freeze. Right now it's fine. Yeah, now it's
Okay.
fine, sir.
So I went and bought that book. I had to ask my mother that, do you think this book is worth the money? And so 15 rupees, there was some discussion. Then she said, if you think it's a useful book, you please buy it. So I'm sure it must have cost certain amount of thought before you decide to spend 15 rupees on a book which is not even in the syllabus. Then I found when I opened this Morrison and Boyd, then a whole new world of organic chemistry started opening up to me.
Yes, sir. That is
Because
very nice.
suddenly I could see that what we were being taught as a kind of a memory work, it could be understood by electronic theory as given by Ingold and Pauling and all these people. The whole idea of a reaction mechanism.
Yes.
So something like SN1 and SN2 reactions, which look completely very mysterious if you have to just learn by heart, suddenly there seems to be a meaning. Why methyl chloride undergoes from SN1 type and why
Listen.
tertiary butyl chloride undergoes from SN2. So many of these things then started making sense to me.
Yes.
So I started that way my journey in chemistry, and I must say, Abhay, I'm a very lucky person. I'm very grateful to the Almighty for having given me, so many chances to just pursue the subject that I really liked, and that is chemistry. Because so many people I find today they end up doing things that they don't like to do, simply because of an income or a salary or a family pressures or so many things, and they are
Yes.
not free, the controllers of their own destinies. I was always put in a position where somehow or the other I was able to do chemistry and then later on PhD. And I went to such a wonderful university, University of Illinois. And it suddenly realized that there was a whole thing out there which uh, simply it was not appreciated in that big sense in India. Although St. Xavier's was very good, I mean, it's a very good college, but It's basically a college that teaches undergrads very well. So basic things it teaches, but it doesn't tell you too much about really research and what it's all about. There was a small research lab in Xavier's, but BSc students weren't allowed to go in there. So we could just see it from outside. But suddenly the whole, really world opened up. And then after that, I must say it was just more and more enjoying myself. And then I always take strange decisions. Like the first strange decision I took was not to take up the IIT seat, even though I got a very high rank. The second decision I took was after I got my PhD from Illinois, I quite easily got a very good job in Eastman Kodak Company in Rochester, where I was doing very interesting projects, no doubt. And I think I enjoyed myself for 2 years, and the company was good enough to sponsor my green card and all, which I got very fast. So, you see, by the age of 25, I had a very good job, US PhD green card. And then suddenly something I started thinking, like, what am I doing here in US? And shouldn't I really be doing anything that I'm doing in India only? So this became a conviction very fast. And for reasons that I'm not altogether very sure why, but I was very sure that I had to go back to India.
Okay.
Like today, people say that all this USA going H1B, waiting, green card, waiting 99 years. See, green card without thinking anything, I got in 6, 7 months. And so I could have stayed there forever. I had bought a nice car and all that. And it was in America, it's very difficult to move around without a car. So it was really nice. It was very, but then I thought, what am I doing out here? Finally, this is not really my own country.
Yes.
And so many Indians have are got there. They've become very successful. I mean, no, no denying all those things. They have done very well for themselves and good for them. But that was not the country for me. I always felt I'm a foreigner there. I never felt that, although that country had given me so much, and
Yes.
most important of all, throughout my life, it has given me this work culture. I found in India that when people say, today 11 o'clock, you started at 11 o'clock.
Yes.
Today, I find in India, if 11 o'clock means 11:10, 11:15, if some politician is coming, it will even be 12:30.
Yes.
So, is it not good? I don't care
Yeah.
if they're politicians and all, but if you say 11 o'clock, you must be there at 11 o'clock.
Yes.
Otherwise, you are not doing your time management properly. And if you are not able to
Yes.
manage your time properly, how will you manage the country properly?
Yeah. Sure.
Everything will be late.
Yes.
Like today in India, our problem is everything is late. Things that we should
Yes.
have done in 1960, we are doing 60 years later.
Yeah.
So we have
Definitely.
become late in everything because this becoming late.
I
I
think
tell
that's why
you,
we are
when
behind China.
it's becoming late, then what happens? You realize after some time in India that it's not something is not going. Then you get all gadbad and all. Then you start taking shortcuts to try to make up for the lost time. Then you take shortcuts. The shortcuts don't work. Then you've got to go and tell somebody what you have done. Then you start telling lies. So you see, very quickly it follows. Basically, we are not able to manage time.
Yes.
They say time and tide wait for no man.
Yeah.
And we are all things, so many things in our families and all, we go here and there. How many Shani temples there are in the whole country? Everywhere in the corner you go, you will find some small Shani temple.
Yes.
And we go there and we worship regularly on Saturdays and other things. How many of us are aware of the fact that Shani is the god of time?
Yes.
And he, with his brother Yama, they control the whole time factor within their hands.
Yes.
So when we are going and happily worshipping Shani all the time, we are not conscious of the most important thing of that God, that we have to maintain a time. One of the best compliments that was paid to me was paid to me by a German. I mean, he knew me a bit well, and he was supposed to come and pick me up. So I said some time was mentioned, 5 p.m. or something. He was coming in the car, and then he shows up exactly at 5. So I was standing there already in that place. He says, I get very scared when I have to come and meet you because when you say 5 o'clock, you will definitely be there at 5. You will probably be there at 4:55 itself. So when a German told me that he gets very scared of me because of my time sense, Then I thought that's a very big compliment. Nobody has paid me a compliment.
Yes, sir.
So
Yes.
because, and if you know anything about those countries, Germanic countries, they're extremely time conscious.
Yeah, sure.
But that I tell you,
Last.
that time thing I tell you, Abhay, I got it in the US also, but I got it in Bombay.
Okay.
I got it in because that is a very great city, and I must say that I owe a lot to my growing up in that place. Because I'll tell you a funny story. I mean, this is not really about science, but it's about general things which I think youngsters should know.
Yes.
We were living in an apartment near the suburban station called Churchgate. And then I had to go and see some friend of mine. I think
Mhm.
it was in the Western Line near Borivali, somewhere it was. So he says something, take the for 3:37 or something to go to Borivali, and I will meet you at that site. So then I went there again a little bit early. I don't like to go, and then I found this is 3:37. He said, from 3:32 I saw one train going to Borivali. So I said, oh, this will be faster. So let me go in this 3:32. Then I didn't realize then there were no cell phones and all. So then when I reached in Borivali, it was that my the friend was standing there and he said, who told you to come in this train? I told you to come in the 3:37. Then I said, why? He said 3:37 is a fast train. You have taken a slow train to come and you have come after that train has come and gone. So one episode like that,
Yes.
it teaches you the value of time.
Time.
This is something that I would say if I had to give a single sort of a message to younger people, students, and all that. One of my former PhD students, a very wonderful bunch. I've trained about 50 people for PhD.
Yes.
And he says that, and each one of them, I must say, in their own way, they have observed me, obviously, and maybe they found some of the things I'm doing is quite nice. So they have tried to also follow a bit of that. We always tend to do that. I do that
Yes.
with my own teachers, even now,
Yes.
even though they're all dead. And but this fellow has told me, he says, what I really liked about you is your time management. He says, I used to think in the beginning, how are you able to manage so many things in one day? Then he realized after some time, he said that you are very clever in how much time you give to each thing. And you don't give more time or less time than anything than based on its importance. And then you also ask, I'm talking about thinking about my teachers. How did I end up doing PhD with two people? That's a very funny story, which
Yeah.
actually worked very well for me in my subsequent academic life.
Yes.
The thing is, my PhD supervisor was a man by the name of David Curtin,
Correct.
who is the
Yes.
author of the famous Curtin Hammett principle,
Yes.
which is so well known in physical organic chemistry. But at the time when I joined Dr. Curtin for my PhD, by the way, till by then he had already completed some 80 PhD students, which in those days was a very high number. And suddenly, at a very late age of 50 or 50 plus, he was then. He decided to change his field slightly. So, from physical organic chemistry, he changed to a field called organic solid state chemistry. In other words, organic reactions in solids. Because till then, people are generally studying organic reactions in solutions. And so, the solid state chemistry was an interesting thing. So, he said, are you interested? So, and in USA, you choose your own PhD advisors. So, you go to the department and you talk to many people. And when I went to Illinois, believe it or not, I wanted to uh, do PhD in synthetic chemistry. Okay, and that was my main interest. I mean, all reading all that Morrison and Boyd and all those things, it had some effect on me. So I wanted to do that. So there was a very famous synthetic organic chemist in Illinois at that time called Robert Coates, and he was a student of the great chemist Van Tamerlan from Stanford. So he had given me an appointment to see him. As part of this, on new PhD students will have to go and talk to all the chaps. So then I went there and I waited, and then he was sitting with another student, and I was waiting patiently. 15 minutes, 20 minutes, to ho gaya. And as you know, I am very time conscious. And then that interview with that student was still going on. I could see because all the doors are open. He is still sitting and talking to them. After some time, I think he also realized that it was getting late. So he says, "Why don't I see you tomorrow morning at 9 a.m.?" This was the evening, previous evening. It was about 4 p.m. It was getting late, 4:30. So I said, sure, I'll come tomorrow at 9 a.m. So then I went off. So as I was walking, then I saw another door open. And there was an old man sitting inside that room who just waved his hand and said hi. So I said, who is this person? He's saying hi
Okay.
to me, but I'm not an impolite fellow. So I went inside and I said hi. And so he said, hi, I'm David Curtin. Come in and sit down. Okay.
Okay.
So you see, I had no idea. By at that time, my ignorance was so high that I didn't know that this was the same curtain of the curtain ambit principle.
Okay.
That's how little I knew. So then he started showing some of the things he's doing, and he wrote on a piece of paper and some all sorts of things. So then the more I'm listening to this gentleman, and I thought, looks quite nice. I mean, the whole thing looks to me a friendly setup. And in those days, like today, synthetic groups are very big in size. And I also knew that Professor Coates' group was very popular because that was a very high noon of synthetic chemistry, especially after Corey's retrosynthesis and all that. One of Corey's students was, in fact, another professor in our department, Professor Katzenel and Bogan. So and then Professor Curtin's group just had two or three people because the area was considered so wild that nobody could probably follow it enough, and so there were only two, three people. So I felt that like joining a group with two, three people will be better than joining a group with 15 people because I may be able to talk more with Professor Curtin. That's what I thought. That's what I thought. Huh? I was totally wrong. Professor Curtin was a very silent man who wouldn't speak much to his students. Whereas Dr. Coates used to be very garrulous and talk to his students every day. So if I had really known the truth, I would have gone that side. But then somehow I joined. And then after that, what can I say? The subject itself is such that it needs the intervention of another subject called X-ray crystallography. So this because first you need to know what the structure of an organic solid is, and then you decide what the reaction is going to be. So Curtin had got this collaboration with a very good crystallographer called Ian Paul.
Okay.
And Ian Paul was part of Woodward's B12 project. And
Okay.
they were doing a part of the crystal structure of B12. And they were in competition with Dorothy Hodgkin about that. But more important than that, Professor Paul was a PhD student of a very great crystallographer in Scotland called J.M. Robertson. He was one of Robertson's last students, and Robertson himself was a student of W.L. Bragg. So you see, from Bragg, Robertson, Ian Paul, and then myself. I'm fourth generation from Bragg, the senior Bragg, W.L. Bragg. So Paul was a much younger man than Curtin. Paul was only about him, and I joined him probably 35 or so. He had just finished his postdoc with Woodward and he had come. So the senior man, Curtin, took him along, and then the students who were in that group, the three or four of us, first year and a half, we'll do some reactions in the wet lab. Then we'll move over to the X-ray lab and then do the crystal structures. So that is why two names came on the thesis. And what happened, we were all very lucky because we learned two subjects basically.
Yeah.
We learned organic
Sure.
chemistry from Professor Curtin and X-ray crystallography
All.
from Professor Paul. So the next generation of students, we combined both. We don't need again any more two people.
Yeah.
So when I supervise my research students, I teach them all both subjects. So I never really needed a collaborator as such to do my basic work. So that is why sometimes, we make our plans, but
Yes, sir.
the plans that finally work out from God, they are better plans for us. So I think that I will tell the second message I'll give to youngsters is don't overplan your career.
Okay.
Allow the things to sort of go with the current.
Okay.
Because firstly, if you do a correct decision, like go to a good place like Illinois,
Yeah.
whether I had gone to the Professor Coates or Professor Curtin, the fellow whose lab was opposite Dr. Paul's lab was Rudy Marcus, who went to Caltech and later on got a Nobel Prize. We used to see him every day walking up and down. He was a young man then. And so, if you go to a place like Illinois at random, if you pick some advisor, it will be a good advisor.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is there. The other thing is that if they all these advisors are in good places, they are so good in research. And I always tell my students and people, MSc students, sir, what shall I do? Which subject shall I take for PhD? Shall I
Yes.
take this subject? Shall I take that subject? I said, you don't worry
Mm.
about what subject to take. You please decide who is your supervisor.
Yes.
You choose your supervisor, you don't choose your subject. I told you, this famous man, J.M. Robertson.
Yes, sir.
J.M. Robertson, I believe, was once asked, what
Mm.
is a good PhD advisor? What will he do? Talking on the same topic. He said, good PhD advisor will be able to supervise a thesis about how a goat can eat a lion.
Cool. Wow. Yes.
So it is serious, serious thing, which means that the subject in which you do your PhD is unimportant. It is how you have learned research methodology. Once you have learned research methodology, Abhay,
Yes.
I have written papers in Dalton transactions. I have written papers in journals of physical chemistry.
Yes.
I have written papers in Journal of Organic Chemistry. I have written paper in crystal growth design.
Yes.
So I have written papers in subjects that cover the breadth of the subject.
Yes.
So people start saying, are you doing this? Are you doing that? No, I'm doing something which I find to be interesting and enjoyable.
Yes.
And then once you learn research methodology, then suddenly in recent times some COVID came, I couldn't go to the lab. I sent away all my postdocs and then everything banned. So then I'm sitting at home not knowing what to do. But I still know how to do research. So that's when I started reading about our constitution, and that is how that Bharat book came out.
Oh.
So people start asking me, how you know all these things? No, no, I didn't know any of these things. I started reading the Constituent Assembly debates, which is the public knowledge which is given from Government of India only. So I started reading those debates, and then I started saying, "Ye kyo kiya aisa? Why did they make so many mistakes?" That's my first thing that I started thinking about when I read that. So then I decided to put my ideas and I started reading a little bit more, just like you will start a new research problem. So my
Yeah.
other book is actually it's only some of my PhD students and postdocs. When they read the book, they started smiling because they said, "Oh, we know exactly why you did these things," because they know my method of working. So it
Yes.
doesn't matter whether it is crystal engineering or a new constitution for Bharat. The research methodology is the same. And here I
Yes.
would also say that there is a great, opportunity for researchers and academics to get into other subjects which are outside. What is the connection between crystal engineering and constitution? Nothing.
That's right.
Nothing.
Yes.
But whereas when you find today, there's a lot of books coming out
Yes.
on the political situation of India, both from the right wing and from the left wing and all that. So many
Yes.
authors are writing some of these books. But I find in many of these books, I've read most of them, that basic rigor of research methodology is not there. Whereas some authors who have the research methodology, who are actually teachers, you might have heard
Yes.
of an author called Meenakshi Jain from Delhi University.
Very much.
Her books,
Yes.
I find is so refreshing because I can make out it is written by a researcher.
Okay.
The same sort of methodologies that I am using in the Bharat book and what we do in a research problem is exactly followed. Whereas many of the other things, the books, they come, they go very fast. The shelf life is the same
Yeah.
thing happens
Very.
in science also. Sometimes you write a very fashionable paper in some fashionable subject. वो तो आ
Yes.
जाएगा, it will come quickly and then it goes off quickly also.
Yes.
You have not said anything new. So I think so. This is a sort of a long question. I don't know. The whole interview is
Yeah.
over. I think this is you have asked
Sir,
good questions. I've given all sorts of things I've said. But
one, two more questions if you have time, sir. Uh,
hmm,
when you are working in lab, sometime you stuck on some problem and you don't know how to come out from those problems. Like 1 month, 2 months, you have given to that problem. So how to overcome that kind of situation? Yeah.
it happens. It happens more often than you think.
Yes.
Suppose I find the first thing you should do is you should really give your best
Yes.
to try to solve the problem. Suppose
Yes.
you still don't get an answer.
Yes.
The first and best thing that you can do is to stop thinking about that problem for a few months. Don't think about it at all. Hello, your video is frozen. Your video is frozen. Now it's come back. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Now, so the first thing I would ask you to do is stop thinking about that problem
Okay.
for about 2 months. Give your brain a rest from that problem, do some other problem.
Okay.
Any researcher worth his or her salt will have numerous problems and other things.
Yes.
Even the student who is working on that problem, you ask him or her to work on something slightly different for some time.
Okay.
If a solution is there, then suddenly it will hit you. Some new thing will suddenly hit you when you are least expecting it.
Okay.
Because by that time you have thought so much about it that you are not going to get an answer so easily. So suddenly, unexpectedly, it will come. That is one.
Mm.
Then there is a second possibility that you got a solution, you are not very pleased with it. Then you can try to write the paper and submit it
Okay.
and see if how the referees think about it. Sometimes they like it. I have come across, I'm a bit embarrassed. Certain things that I wrote which I'm not very sure about. The referees seem to like it quite a lot. So, though, chalo, let the paper get published. Sometimes the referees are very tough, and
Yes.
then they also show some of the concerns that you yourself are having when you were
Yes.
working on the
Right.
problem. Then this not happened to me very often, and then you stop work on the problem. But even there, I tell you, there are some of these problems where I have felt personally that I was too early to work on that problem.
Okay.
That there is something there, but the public is not prepared to hear it right now. And again, I told you sense of timing, no?
Yeah.
The sense of timing, it's very bad in science to be too late because the
Yes.
whole world has done something before you.
Yes.
But I found in my case, I was never too late. Sometimes I was too early.
Yes.
And I felt, "Arey, I shouldn't have tried this right now." I learned also through that process. Sometimes when I know I'm too early, I don't publish some of that work. And I wait until I feel that that work is mature because much of my work is concerning this weak hydrogen bond.
Yeah.
And ये problem तो बिल्कुल it kept coming up again and again in that because you are very sure about something and the rest of the world doesn't want to believe you. So in the early years of CHO research, especially in the 80s and early 90s, this problem used to come up more often than not. And somehow maybe I was foolish or what, I still persisted. And finally, 99, when I wrote that book with Steiner, by that time the idea of CHO was fully accepted. So after that, there was no more gadbad in that area. But this is something that I've also found. When you say difficult problems, things, so either you stop thinking about it, solution will come. Otherwise, you've got some wrong idea, then stop it.
Yeah.
Then,
Okay.
otherwise, if you are very sure about your idea, you still push ahead like I did with CHO. Then it will
Okay.
work. So many people tell me, even in crystal engineering side, that you thought about many things before other people. Now that I don't know how I am able to do it, but many things which one of my very good friends, I won't name him, he's not from India. He said, all of us have ideas, but only Professor Deshraju is allowed to publish his ideas. I don't know if it was a compliment or not. So, so
Yes.
I mean, I take this, on the whole, I take it as a compliment. But
Completely.
some people might feel that that's not really a compliment. I don't know.
So, like for my generation, you are kind of ideal for us, ideal or who you follow for a scientific journey.
Tell me,
Like who
who is
are
my
your
ideal
ideal? Yeah.
in the science side? Okay, I'll tell you. Ostwald, Willstater, Bayer, Kekule, Liebig, Werner,
Okay.
all the famous
From
German
like
chemists of
very
the
kind of
19th century who laid the foundation of my beloved subject. So, if they had not done what they have done in the way they did it at that time,
okay.
then this subject of chemistry would not be what it is today.
Yes.
So, I find that these are the people I always keep thinking about and what they must have done and how they must. I mean, Ostwald, there was no subject called physical chemistry.
Yes.
It was just some jumble of something, some observations. Emil Fischer also. I mean, out of chemistry, he carved out a subject called biochemistry. So when people tell me that, maybe I'm influenced by them also, because uh, very well-known chemist from India, whom I respect quite a lot, he said that he was talking about me, and he said this gentleman has taken an idea and made it into a textbook in 30 years. So I feel probably I have been influenced so much by the great German chemists that this idea of carving out something that was not there before. There was nothing called crystal engineering before.
Yeah.
And now today it is a
Real time.
subject where there are so many subject journals, at least 300-400 groups are working all over the world in some aspect or the other. And crystal engineering has become so big that now sub subjects have started coming out, like mechanical properties of solids. These crystals that you can take and bend and break and twist and all that. That itself has become a huge discipline. Then industrial solid state reactions, that has become a huge one. And then so the subject has become so big. Crystal engineering became a sort of a came out of supramolecular chemistry. But out of crystal engineering have now come so many different subjects. So that at least I'm again, I told you, I'm very grateful that I had a chance. And in fact, I do believe very strongly that scientists, we are privileged witnesses, I say, privileged first witnesses to God's work. So we are able to, because of our training and other things, we have been taught in such a way that we are able to be those first witnesses. And we should take our whole subject like that we are privileged first witnesses, and the signs are all there. You can see it. Some people can perceive and go beyond what you can merely see, and then pull something out of it. And finally, you mentioned my stay in the company for
Yeah.
2 years. One thing that company taught me was whatever you do in science, it has to be useful to other people.
Yes.
You can't do something just to satisfy your own gray cells.
Yes.
So I've always tried to see in my work in crystal engineering and hydrogen bonds that whatever I do, it is something that's going to be useful to other people. I think when you keep that in mind, then the citations will come automatically. People say, I have so many citations and this, that. But see, I never tried to get those citations.
Yes.
And I never wrote a paper for citations.
Yes.
But I always kept one thing in mind: whatever I write, if it is not useful to somebody else, then it just becomes a sort of academic curiosity for me alone. and that I'm not very keen of, investing my students' time in something like. It's okay, I can think like that, but I should not waste my students' time on something which is just a sort of idle fancy for me.
Sir, last question, second last question. Where do you see the future of Indian science heading?
Heading
Yeah.
not in such a good place, because whatever we have done so far, something we have done, but firstly, Abhay, science needs a lot of money. The days when, like when I did my work, science did not need money because it was, especially my kind of work, is idea based. It is not so easy to do generate idea based problems. So most of the chemistry problems today are all systems based. So it requires a very heavy equipment, instrumentation, and measuring smaller and smaller time scales and distance scales is going to take a lot of money. This kind of money is simply not available, or even the little that is available is not being administered properly and given to properly to the people. Actually, there is very little money today to do pure science.
Yes, sir.
And I think if a country is not investing in pure science, then the applied science will also suffer after some time.
Yes.
You cannot get applications when the basic science thing is, as China has done something of a 30 years, they have been pumping money into pure science. Now you watch, before long, the Chinese applications and all will come out too many. Whereas still you can't, we are still thinking only some IISc, IIT Kanpur, some two or three places.
Yes.
We are not able to think big, think more. Most of our students are in state universities, and yet the state
Yeah.
universities are totally starved of money. And so, where all this will go, I do not know. But you see, getting a good idea, an idea that gets traction and people all over the world start following it. If you mean that the Indian science, where it is going, yes, we are turning out PhDs. And today, unfortunately, I think many of our MSc students also don't want to do PhD in India, they want to do PhD in America. Now, I went to America because there were hardly any places in India to do PhD. And but today that is not the case. Today there are very good places in India, but they don't want to do. They want to go because they say that, sir, even if we want a job in India, they say foreign postdoc to chahiye.
Yes.
So once we have this sort of a inferiority complex,
Yes.
that unless you have certification by Gora, only then you are good. Then you
Yes.
see, there's no hope. Then how we can say that Indian science will be good? For every time that we need a tick mark to be put by white man,
Yes.
this is not good. So that's why I'm not very confident, actually, frankly speaking.
Okay. Okay. So, sir, what advice would you like to give? Like you said, time management is your one thing. Another, overplan your journey. Other things, if you want to convey to young generation or anything, like we should focus to do good science or.
Doing good science. Another thing which I told you, which you have not mentioned, is if you want to do PhD, only
Mhm.
go for a good supervisor. Don't care about what subject it is.
Yes.
And one of the things which our students do not do today, you must talk to some of the members of the research group quietly before you pick the advisor and find out really what kind of a person he or she is. Because the PhD student teacher relationship is a very close one for 4 or 5 years, it will be. And unless you personally get along with your advisor, your PhD will be a failure.
Yes.
Doesn't matter even if you get some 10 subjects, 10 papers in JAX and Angeventer and all, doesn't matter. If your relationship, personal relationship with the professor is professional, that professional morality and ethics between student and supervisor should be 100% perfect. If that is not there, then the whole thing becomes, it is a house built on a sandy soil. And the effects of that will catch up with you throughout your academic career. So supervisors also you should know. Any other thing I would say is yes, Uber planning is certainly not required. Do a time management. The other thing is learn how to take it off. Like I said, when the project is too difficult, stop thinking for 2 months.
Okay.
Enjoy other things also.
Yes.
Read about other people's research.
Okay.
You know how many of our people even know they are doing PhD in IIT Kanpur or IIC. Suppose they come for an interview and they are asked, "Oh, you are coming from IIT Kanpur. Oh, this chemistry department. Oh, so and so is there. You know, he's a professor. You know him." So the student should at least know who the other professors in the department are.
Yes.
That
Yes.
they don't know. So if you ask XYZ is in the department, what? By the way, he has done some very interesting work on arsenic contamination. So this fellow doesn't even know that arsenic is an element in the periodic table. So much he is interested in some organic catalysis that if you ask him whether arsenic is an element or a compound, he will not know. That's not good. It's not at all good because it means that you are just trying to do a PhD for the sake of getting PhD. Oh, I can get a PhD. That means I can go abroad and do postdoc.
Yes.
Then after that postdoc, Are Baba, what will you do? No, no, I'll get a job. I will live there. I will send money to India. This is not a this is not a life plan.
Yes.
Going to live in some Oklahoma and then to send some small money so that I can build some house in Vijayawada. That is not a life plan, you know.
Yes.
This is what they should remember.
Yes. Uh, One more question. I don't know if you have time, but my friend asked, he's kind of atheist, so he asked, religion and science can't live together, but after listening you, science and religion can coexist. So, like,
Very
this
much,
is the thing. Yeah.
very much, because but it's only true in our religion.
Okay. In
It is not.
Sanatan
It is
Dharma.
not. This is not. He is correct for Abrahamic religions,
Okay.
but in our religion, we are even allowed to question.
Yeah.
I was told this by Professor Murli Manohar Joshi. He once told me that only in Sanatan Dharma you are even allowed to ask, does even God know the answer for this question? So only in our subject, in our religion, science and religion, no, they are completely compatible. You cannot have one without the other. If you think about it a little bit more, if you take whole thing that Vaiseshika Darshana of Canada, then the whole atoms, molecules, everything is all explained out there. It is actually written down in our scriptures. It's one of the six darshanas. So science is completely compatible. There is no question of incompatibility. Actually, without science, you can't have religion. Without religion, you cannot have science. But it's only true in Sanatan Dharma. This whole science-religion conflict only comes in Abrahamic religions.
Okay. So, thank you so much for your time. More than 48 minutes. So, thank you so much, sir. It was very nice talk. Like, you are kind of my role model. You are my role model. So, it's like best day of
Well,
my life. I don't know.
it's very, very, very nice to have talked with you, and I hope through your podcast to reach other young people. I don't know whether my own life or whether my own journey is mortal, but many things, many important things have happened to me without my planning for it or having deliberately tried to plot my way towards something. So it has simply happened, and I happened to be there, and I could see what is happening. And the early days, I think, proper training, proper guidance from my teachers, both in school and college and university subsequently. I think that gives a basic foundation. After that, it's pretty much in your hands. And today, of course, people in India, we are at a cusp point. India can really go up high, or it may not go up at all. So, when they really go up high means that unless each and everybody tries to contribute to part of this, then this country will not go up high. But we are at a point where we could go up really high. And young people in India today should feel a certain commitment that by all of us being in this famous country of ours, we will not only contribute to its becoming really high, but we will also be able to enjoy all the fruits.
Yes.
Hmm? Okay.
Okay. Thank you so much.
You're most welcome, Abhay.
Yeah.
And thank you once again for the opportunity to talk to you and talk to other young people.